I spoke with activist and author Kimberly Jones. We talked about her book, I'm Not Dying With You Tonight, and about her powerful speech about the plight of Black Americans that went viral.
You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own by our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so fuck your Target. Fuck your Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they could burn this bitch to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what Black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
Kimberly Jones, welcome to the Daily Social Distancing Show.
I'm so happy to be here with you.
Let's get straight into that video that went viral in a way that few videos can. What was interesting about this video was that so many people have been talking about what's going on in America, but this connected with people who maybe didn't understand what was happening before or didn't quite grasp the subject. I had a friend personally who was like, I don't know. And he sent me your video and he's like, for the first time, I truly understand. And I was like, wow, what am I, chopped liver? So talk me through the video, like, because it seemed organic. It seemed like you were in the midst of, like, it looked like there were protests or something had happened. Talk me through how that video came to be.
So my friend David Jones was working on a documentary. He and I have both been out at the protest, separately, and he has taken his camera out and was recording. And so he called me that Sunday morning and said, hey, you're really good at like man on the street stuff. Can you come do some man on the street for me? And I was like, sure. So we stayed all day. We ended up being at a protest later that day, but the time in which the video was recorded, people were out cleaning up downtown Atlanta. There was this large group of African-American people who were downtown, cleaning up downtown, and they had spent their own money purchasing cleaning items and things like that. And I kept interviewing these people, and the consistent, notion was that, the focus was on the looting, and they were focused on the looting, and they were focused on what that was going to do to the narrative. And it just struck me in a really odd way that I felt like this is the direction that the narrative was going, that everyone was going to center the looting and lose focus on the real issue at hand. And so I just started talking, and David hit record on his camera, and that almost 7-minute video is what came out.
Yeah, it was a really wonderful analogy. That it was apt in the way that it captured a story that so many people have struggled to tell about America and in many ways the world. I mean, using Monopoly was the perfect metaphor, because it was like that's what Monopoly is. It's a game where the rich get richer, and some people, you end up in jail and you don't get your 200. And I mean, most Monopoly games I know of end up with people flipping the board and hating each other. Do you think that's where America is right now? Is people are flipping the board saying, I don't want to play because this game is not fair?
Yeah, I think that's exactly where people are. I think people are saying that the game is fixed. And I think there are people who are finally waking up and being empathetic to that, right? And saying, hey, I've been on the board and I've watched what's happened to you. And, now I'm recognizing too that the game is fixed. And like, I'm outraged on your behalf. I'm not even, I'm not surprised even a little bit that this outrage has come on the back of a pandemic, because I think it's first time that people have been still, and they've actually been able, they're not like taking the kid to soccer and going to work and doing all these things. And so they actually had the time to sit down and grapple with the issues, because growth only comes from discomfort. And so you can't avoid, something that's going to make you uncomfortable if you're sitting on the couch stuck with it.
One of the lines that struck me the most and has stuck with me ever since is when you said to people who are watching the video, you said, these people, and I'll paraphrase you, you basically said these people should be grateful that Black people want justice and not revenge. And that struck me because maybe because of South Africa's narrative as well, so many people assume that what Black people want is like revenge or an advantage as opposed to an equality. That struck a note with so many people. What do you think some people don't understand about the struggle?
I think, one of the bigger issues that people don't understand is, we talk a lot about the murders, and we should, because they're devastating, and we have to get these crimes solved, and we have to have a better way of handling these situations. But the one thing that people don't talk about are the daily indignities that Black people suffer in this country at the hand of the police. Officers are being sent to marginalized neighborhoods, to do excessive ticketing in areas where that people are economically disadvantaged, and there are going to be extenuating circumstances that are going to cause them to not have certain things in place, like registrations and insurances and things like that. And then you put them in a system where they have these huge, like $1,500, $2,000 tickets that they can't pay, and now they're on probation. And so it's like this ability to like feed the penal system. But again, for me, that's why I made the monopoly analogy, because it's economically based, and that economic disadvantage allows people to continue to brutalize people. And so if you don't see the daily indignities, you think these occasional murders that make the news, which for the record, there are tons of them, tons of murders, like the case of like Jamarian Robinson, who don't really make national news, but there's just like a daily, it's like this bully that lives in our community and nobody else sees it.
Yeah, what's really powerful about just your analysis of the situation is that it very aptly captures what's happening, not just in America, but specifically in Atlanta right now. Atlanta has become a hotbed of these issues, and the killing of Rayshard Brooks has been one of the more interesting ones, because I've always felt like, it encapsulates everything that's happening wrong in America, everything wrong that's going on. It's interesting that he even had a video that of him a few years ago where he talked about what it's like to be somebody who served time but has no opportunity to get back into society, and how that then traps you in a cycle of always going back, as you said, into the carceral system. The news came out now of the police officer who shot him, kicking him afterwards, and if anything, people I think were reacting to the fact that it was like a further dehumanizing of this person. It wasn't just that you've killed the person, but now you're kicking them quite literally when they're down. What would you say is like the core essence of what people in Atlanta are saying and feeling right now?
I think the main thing is that people in Atlanta are super upset because the original narrative that came out was that this doesn't happen in Atlanta, right? Like that was the narrative that the people in charge put out, and people who are experiencing this on a daily basis were completely insulted by that. And they didn't respond well to that, because they're like, we can name situations. Have you guys just forgotten about Mr. Arbery? That was just right before this, right. With the vigilantes. But even in terms of the police, again, I bring up people like Jamarian Robinson, who 4 years after his murder, where over 90 rounds were fired at him and 76 rounds hit his body, his mother has still not received any justice for that. There have not been any arrests in that case. So this is something that is happening here too. And so people were feeling that at the time in which this happened. And now to have this happen with Rayshard Brooks right on the heels of this. And here's the thing, the disconnect that you would even think to draw and use your firearm in the midst of this heightened state just goes to show you how much there is a lack of concern for the Black form in this country, and how aggressive, and how we have created the warrior cop instead of the guardian of the community that we actually deserve. Because at the end of the day, I don't care what the circumstances were around that, the sentence for what was going on in that video was not death. And we cannot allow officers to be judge, jury, and executioner in the street. That is not how this works. That is not the social contract that we all agreed to, as I so eloquently stole from you.
I will say I've stolen most of my things from a Black woman who I call my mom. So I guess it's just a cycle that goes around. Let's talk a little bit about your work that, I guess, as fate would have it, is tied to everything that's going on now. You co-authored a book entitled I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. And the book is a novel that is inspired by the civil unrest in Baltimore after what happened to Freddie Gray. So tell me about the book and why you decided to write a novel, a book that lives in a fictitious world about something that's really real that's happening in America today.
My co-author, Geely Siegel, saw this clip in the news that the news like brushed over really quickly during the Baltimore unrest about a group of kids who were caught behind a police barricade because they did some really stupid things, right? So they shut down schools, told kids to go home early and disperse, but they had also shut down public transportation, and most of the kids at the high school took public transportation home, so they couldn't get home. And so there's this quick little story about them getting trapped behind a police barricade, and then we couldn't find anything else about it. We called around, we couldn't figure out what happened to these kids. And Gili and I are both moms who at the time had kids who were just a little bit younger than those kids, and we were concerned. We're like, what happened to those kids? And so we couldn't get any answers. We decided to write this book because we're writers and that's the way we process things. And because kids are experiencing these moments at the same time in which we are, but we're not having real conversations with them. And I think we're underestimating their ability to not only have these conversations and grapple with these moments, but actually to have some insights and really fresh ideas and new energy that can help us wrap our head around these situations. And so we wanted to write something for those kids to give them a moment. And it's interesting, we were at a teachers conference and a teacher from Ferguson came up to us and said, some of my kids were in middle school when the Ferguson unrest happened, and now they're in high school, and I gave them your book and we did your book as an assignment. And it's the first time that they were able to process their thoughts and they were able to utilize the book as a tool to do that. And so I hope that's what it's doing, is allowing kids to enter into really hard conversations.
Yeah, it is, as you say, a hard conversation, but with tools like your book, I hope more kids can get into it. I hope more parents find your book. It's called I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. It's a really, really beautiful examination of what's happening in America through the lens of younger people, which I think sometimes connects with everybody a little bit more. Kimberly Jones, thank you so much for being on the show. Don't be a stranger, and I hope to see you again.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Stay safe out there.